Joining me now, presidential historian and former White House advisor of President George H.W. Bush, Doug Wead, and GOP strategist and former special assistant to President George W. Bush, Ron Christie. Good to see you, gentlemen. Doug, you'd never know, listening to Sean Spicer, you'd never know it from the headlines, all these, do-nothing president headlines that you're getting for President Trump. But I've just written down a couple of points. There's a Keystone Pipeline. He opened that up, creating thousands of jobs. He got individual companies all over the country to bring jobs back to the United States. There was the Gorsuch confirmation. That was huge. You had the deregulatory policies, all kinds of deregulatory policies. Foreign policy, Sean was talking about that. Nobody expected him to have wins there, but he has. And now it looks like we may have a real tax reform program come out tomorrow, and he's making movement on health reform. How does that stack up? In my mind, it seems to be pretty good 100 days.
I think so. I agree with you. I think he's pulled off a hat trick. He's turned around the economy without any legislation, just a jawboning and meetings in the Roosevelt Room. We've got corporate leaders saying they're going to stay here. We've got some saying they're coming back to America. We've got them hiring America. And he's turned around the Supreme Court, and he's turned around illegal immigration. He doesn't have to build a wall. Donald Trump is the wall. It reminds me of Ronald Reagan. He got elected and the Iranians let the hostages go. So just the threat of him getting elected seems that illegal immigration has dropped like a rock. So I agree with you. A lot of these numbers look very good for him.
But Ron, how can the media get away? It's funny, Doug was mentioning Ronald Reagan, because during Ronald Reagan, he had to battle with the same media. Tried to tell the story, if Reagan is elected, we're going to be at war in a couple of weeks, and the economy will be even worse than it is now. Of course, neither happened. The economy turned around. We won the Cold War. How can the media get away with describing a very full 100-day agenda as do nothing?
Well, good evening, David. It's really sad for me to look at this and observe that the media seems to be portraying what the president's doing is terrible. They are catering to their base, the people who live in the Acela corridor from New York City, of course, all the way up to Boston, and of course, the people out here on the West Coast. But when you talk to real Americans outside of the bubble, outside of the Beltway, they appreciate the fact that this president has really inspired consumer confidence. They appreciate the fact that this president has stood up to the Chinese and, in fact, forged a relationship with them to deal with the terrible threat of violence coming from North Korea. So pick after pick, issue after issue, the Supreme Court nomination, you could go on and say, by any objective standard, this president has surpassed expectations. He's done an excellent job, and he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do in the campaign.
And we just put up, Doug, some of the headlines that we've seen. These even worse than do nothing. That he's a terrible president so far. Historically speaking, and you are a historian, do you think headlines such as these are going to go down as laughingstock headlines in history?
I don't know. The media never comes out and ever says we're wrong, so I'm not going to hold my breath.
Historians do.
Historians do. History grinds slower, and it demands facts. But just keep in mind, when Ronald Reagan was president, 1 million men and women and young people marched in the streets of New York City because he was introducing intermediate-range cruise missiles in Europe. There was outrage, and the media never finally did say, okay, we were wrong, you won the Cold War. They never said it.
All right, gentlemen, we got to leave it at that. I'd love to spend more time with Doug and Ron. Good to see you both. Thank you very much. Meantime, very strong earnings.